Welcome to Art World Insights from the 1743 House. Wine, artist friends, and free-form discussion. Where will we go? Does it matter? Join us. I'm Christopher Schmidt, owner of the Schmidt Dean Gallery, Cherry Hill. 35 years of working in the contemporary art market. And this is my experiment. Thank you. This is our first sort of intro into a long format discussion. I'm very happy to invite a number of guests to what is referred to in Cherry Hill as the 1743 House. Hopefully I'm going to do a series of dialogues with artists from the area that have been involved in the arts and what it means to be an artist for over a number of years, and their perspective and what is going on and how the arts are progressing through these strange times. I have Alida Fish here. Alida's been teaching at the University of the Arts, recently retired, since 1983.
When I started, 81.
81, apologize. Steve Tanis, who taught at the University of Delaware. Mm-hmm. Also a painter, Alida photographer. We have shows up right now of Alida and John Baltzell, who's been teaching at the Academy
since 85.
85. So we have a lot of experience here. And I guess what I wanted to get out of this is just have a dialogue about how art is changing. And the idea that competence is no longer prized. And do you find that? Do you see that? And what do you think of that?
Wow.
I mean, you've had students.
Well, or is competence, how do we define competence?
All right, let's take it from there. Do you need competence in art? And why do you need competence in art? If you do.
Are we talking about craft?
Right.
Well, craft, but also understanding of the aesthetic history.
Right.
Or,
yeah.
What
or
else?
the dreaded word talent. You know, people.
Well, I mean,
people used to think talent was one thing, and I
it's
think
something else now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Talent is something we all have,
absolutely.
and the perspective is so wide-ranging that anybody that can do anything is. Well, what I like to say is, I'm special, you're special, what we do is special, and if you don't understand that I'm special, that's an issue that you have to overcome.
I think a lot of things that are designed to develop sort of older notions of talent are going by the wayside in teaching. And I think there's a number of reasons for that are perfectly valid. I don't know what I would contribute if I was still teaching today, because I'm from that older generation, but you can see it happening. Like, for instance, at Delaware, I don't think they offer figure classes anymore.
Yeah.
And University of the Arts no longer has its foundation program. I went there.
Right.
And I taught in that program for a short period of time. But that comes out of Bauhaus.
But,
right. And so I don't know whether that's the reason, but again.
There was a feeling, though, that it was time to move on, that a lot of the Bauhaus foundation methods weren't as valid now as they were 50 years ago.
And that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an interest. I'm still teaching, so the two of you have retired. I'm still teaching for maybe a year longer. And I can't quite define it, but the incoming students are, do come from a different sort of place, and the language is different.
Do you think the respect in an institution is different?
Yes, it seems to take longer to get them to really research and look at the past. Mm-hmm. They're very interested in the present. Yeah. And I think youth usually is. It feels just a little bit more so.
I remember having students come to the gallery to look at art, where I don't see that anymore unless the teacher brings them.
Yeah, and that's actually... I've heard that from other galleries, and I do try to take a class and to galleries, and I think it's helpful. But it's very hard to get them to do it on their own, and that's a surprise in the sense of well, it is present. This is what's going on right now. So be curious about that. The level of curiosity seems, again, it just seems longer to get them because as far as I'm concerned, that's what they need more than anything else, is curiosity and persistence.
Well, is it curiosity in themselves, and that's why they don't have to look?
No, curiosity in what's out there that they can learn from.
No, but what I'm saying is that they don't need to go out and look for these things because
they
it's all referential. It's all
yeah.
it's all about identity, and it's all about them and how they express them instead of a building up of the aesthetic.
Yeah,
No?
I mean, I think that's true, but I have to, and it feels more like that. But I have to also wonder whether, see, when I started teaching at the academy, the average age was 27 or 28.
Yeah.
And now they come in at 17 or 18, which to me is kind of shocking because I wasn't used to dealing with that age. And I feel like they're just wound up in being that age. And so it does seem to take longer because I had an experience of really teaching more mature students for a very long time, for at least 20 years. Mm-hmm. And it's only been the last 15 years.
Well, I'm not sure, having taught undergraduates most of my teaching career, I'm not sure how different the expectations are of those students and their curiosity level. I mean, I think they're learning a lot very quickly.
Yes. Yep.
And with technology, so available, they learn very quickly.
Right.
I like that cartoon from the New Yorker where it's like a woman and a man and his wife, and the woman turns to her husband. She goes, "Do you know that, or do you Google know it?"
Right.
Right. But
I think that's a good point. That's a whole other level.
I taught history of photography for a number of years, and the last few years, I would mention a name. I would stand at the back of the room, and the images would be projected in front of the class. And I would say something, I might bring up Muybridge, somebody like that. And I'd see laptops and phones go on, boom, 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 boom. I'd be showing maybe 2 images, and they were looking at, a lot of people in the class were looking at like 20.
Right.
They're they're engaged, and they're adding to what I was doing.
Right.
And I thought, wow, this is great, actually.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Because they're able to scan, and it's hard to say whether, you can absorb more when you've got 20 images in front of you, but in a way I think you can. You get a sense
or that you have it there and you go back to it. It's something it's not here, it's here.
Right. And they have their own sort of perfect reference notebook there in their hand.
Right.
So there are things that are
about
kind of
that immediacy can certainly be very good. Yeah.
But does it negate itself because there's so much of it? And so it becomes, it's just another one of those dead artists.
I don't know. I think in a funny way, maybe we're the wrong people to judge that. Mm-hmm. Because, it's because we came up, we learned in a very different way. And this feels different to me, but ultimately, I still get great students third and fourth year.
Yeah.
First year is difficult, but I always like teaching first year. Mm-hmm. I find it harder and harder, but I still want to see them coming in and then be incredibly surprised as they go out. So you still get that, but sometimes it feels in that beginning year or two that you're not taking in enough, you haven't learned enough. In the sense of the broader art world, not so much technically. I think that's, but again, the computer doesn't help you paint. So I'm teaching painting, so it's not technical in that sense.
Well, you deal more with the computer.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of technical information with photography, but there always has been a certain amount.
Sure.
Technique is really critical for most photography.
Right.
What about influence? Is influence necessary?
Yes.
Well, influence is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's it can be anything. I think what's trying to be more positive on this outlook. I think the influences are actually now so much greater. The access to ideas and images is so great that it's almost overpowering how much influence there is.
Right.
And that, you know, the problem is sort of trying to figure out,
That's interesting.
you know, the ideas, come up with some ideas that you can follow, you know, and discover things. You know, even though you may see work that, I think also, this is another aspect of it all, there's a lot more crossover between media now than there used to be.
Yes, which I really like.
Yeah.
And that's
personally.
one of the things that the new, you know, rejecting the old Bauhaus
Right, so
foundation
you had to
system.
this or this.
Now
That's true.
things are team
Wide
taught, and they're you know, they are conceptually driven, and
Right.
Do you think the fact that there is so much stuff coming in, that's why it's getting so insular? That these kids are so overwhelmed with so much stimulus that the only place to really find an avenue towards meaning is from within, or something?
no, I mean, the last few years that I've taught, I felt like the students, by the time they were juniors and seniors, they were really engaged and excited, you know,
Right.
and still discovering things. And I started feeling like I was the one that needed to get out of teaching because I felt like I'd seen it all. There are certain, I wouldn't call them hurdles, but there's certain waypoints that people can go through in their career. And you see a lot of younger people going through these, you know, things that are self-referential, things that are very romantic. You could make a little list of all the things you're liable to see.
Yes.
And I went through all of those
Right.
steps,
Yeah.
and I still see that going on. You know, I still
Oh, that's good.
critique
Yeah.
things. So that's a little bit of, that's sort of self-discovery and maturing, and
Yeah.
I think it's once people start to mature and actually get out of school that you start getting a sense of who they are and whether
Absolutely.
they can stay with it,
Absolutely. Because for some
how
students,
deep they are.
yeah, because for some students,
They fall by the wayside too.
they're
Yeah.
they're an okay student, but there's something about the format or the situation that blocks them from really allowing themselves to let maybe something truer to them come out. And you know, 2 or 3 years out of school, all of a sudden you see their work, and it's like, there they are.
Yeah.
Finally. Well, which is understandable. It's not as if it's a quick fix anyway.
No,
But school is wonderful, but it can also, and I'm always pleased when seniors start to say, I'm really glad I'm graduating and I'm going to get out of here, because
Yeah.
where they're not so dependent, they realize there's something more once they get away from
And there are
it.
things
They've
they
got
wanna do
something, and things they
that
want
don't
to do.
fit in with
Exactly.
a curriculum.
Exactly.
One of the big things that I've seen change over the years from when I first started teaching, and it's not so much to do with teaching, but it has to do with the democratization of becoming an artist. You know, like everybody's an artist.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting on the one hand, and especially in Philadelphia with all the First Friday stuff.
Right.
And you know, the streets would be packed with people. It was like, wow, you know,
Right.
this is incredible. It wasn't commercial particularly. You know, it was, a lot of it was entertainment. But the number of people that could be active in the art world suddenly was just
Huge.
Booming,
yeah.
Booming, yeah.
Booming.
There was there was an access to sophistication that they were trying to follow.
right.
Yeah, that seemed to be the case. It seemed to seems to change now. Where the thing that bothers me and that I see on the negative, well, I guess it's not even negative. I shouldn't even say that. Is that, you know, the idea of it being a pursuit of self-actualization. That it's no longer a academic pursuit, that it's not built on the shoulders of this aesthetic.
Right.
It's not a furthering of the aesthetic. It's just, I want to be a self-actualized human, and instead of buying a piece of art or being a connoisseur in any way, I just go out and do it myself, because looking at a beautifully piece of art isn't as necessary as it once was. Do you know what I mean? It just seems like, you know, clients going back to school and learning how to paint instead of continue to collect. Not that you know, that's a little self-serving, but to a certain extent, it's also this sort of loss of the idea that artwork in itself has something to give you that can also self-actualize. There's something, now that sounds a little hokey, but metaphysical in finding a piece of artwork that has gotten to that level where it speaks to other people, where people are no longer interested in seeing that as much as they were.
It's interesting. I mean, you're coming from watching people come into
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
and how they're responding or not.
Yeah.
And, so it really, in some ways, is a very different, I mean, you have a different point of view or just what you're seeing.
But I think it's also connected to, being a better artist. It's funny because Nisa came to the thing, we had this conversation. She'd bring her students in all the time.
Yeah.
I would give these long talks to her students and basically say, you want the best, quickest way to understanding how to be a good artist, go out and buy a piece of artwork. And they all look at me like,
I always thought that was one of the best bits of advice you ever gave to my students.
Yeah, it is.
Because suddenly it makes you stop and think, well, would I buy my work or would I buy my best friend's work, or where are we on that scale?
Right.
Or
That's
even if you're doing a piece of artwork and it's a collage and you're like, well, the world's disposable, so the stuff I put on there is disposable. Like the schnabels where the plates would fall off in the middle of the night. I mean, if you're an artist, that sounds romantic. I'm just doing what I have to do, and this is all part of the process. But if you're putting down $50 for a friend's piece of artwork, and something falls off, you're like, hey, dude, get the hell over here and paste that goddamn thing back on again. It's the mindset. It takes the romanticism out of it in a way.
That is a good thing, I think, to make them think about. Like, would I buy? I mean, just the idea, because it's a different approach than, I think, and this is maybe more certainly the graduate students at PAFA, but also comes down to the undergrads, is a big push about how you sell yourself and how you get out there in the world and what you do. And there's much more of that than there used to be. I mean, PCA, we didn't even have a senior show.
Yeah.
So, idea.
Oh, wait a second. I want to say something about this. The one thing I've always sort of treasured in being in the art world and being part of the art world, and I think is a big part of being in the art world, is discussion, friends, wine, hanging out, and discussion, and working through this stuff. And quite frankly, I don't think it happens as much anymore. Am I wrong with that?
Well, I think I find it harder. Like, we all have our little worlds and our little schedules, and you think, sure, let's get together, and then it's like, well, I can't do it there and I can't do it there.
But I mean, not even us, but I mean, do you see the students doing that kind of stuff?
No, I actually do see the students doing that.
Graduate students do.
Graduate students do it a lot. Undergraduate students do it as well, again, towards the end of their time, because they realize, oh my God, this family is going to break up soon. What do we do? So I find that the juniors or seniors, they'll start getting together and critiquing their own work because they've been listening to us, the faculty, for 3 years, and they sort of want to kind of start doing it themselves. So they'll do exactly this. They get to somebody's apartment or somebody's
that's good to know.
studio,
That's really
because they
satisfying.
realize, partially because I think faculty, I certainly tell my students, is, you have to stay in touch with a couple of these people.
Yeah.
Because it's very lonely out there.
And it's a great networking.
And it will keep you
never
alive. It'll get you through the difficult times to just keep in touch. And a fair amount of them really do.
Well, people that ask me about getting into galleries, there's no better way to get into a gallery than another artist recommending you wholeheartedly. And I'm not talking about when an artist comes up and says, well, I have to do this. You'll have to look at this person. But say, you got to take a look at this person's really doing some amazing stuff. And I mean, that's like, for me, that's what you do. You don't mess around with that.
I mean, back to a little bit what I was talking about with the push towards selling your work and promoting yourself. Our students all cannot graduate. The undergraduates can't graduate without doing a personal statement, artist statement, which personally I dislike, but it's real, it's something that's asked of you, and organizing your work, photographing your work, so they have all that.
Yeah, but when Mike did that show of the people from the academy, and there was some there were some holes in that teaching.
Yeah.
Like, how do I wire my paintings?
Yeah,
Like-
right. Some really practical little
Yeah,
things
practical
that they're.
things.
Yeah, I mean they're really focused on
Yeah.
this larger sense, but I think all of that's good. I think it's interesting again because it was not my experience. I was a slow learner, so I'm like, in a way, I don't think they should be thinking about getting into a gallery. I think they should be, going and sending their work to all the little
Yeah, you
little
gotta work.
places.
You gotta find yourself.
Yeah.
You gotta get out
Group
from
shows
underneath
and
it.
all that, and don't worry about that. That's where you start. Everything starts small,
Yeah.
and you're not ready anyway. Which I think the good ones know that, and the other ones don't.
Yeah.
They're like, well, no, I've been here. I should be able to, But there's always that.
But that gallery business is a source of much of the attrition in the art world. I mean,
Yes,
when
probably.
kids get out of school and they, I know a graduate student who, he said he gave himself 2 years to get a gallery. This is right after graduate
Yes,
school, so he
yes.
wasn't doing his best work, his most mature work, but he went around the galleries and they get the typical kind of rude rejection sometimes, and it's so it was so off-putting for him that was it. He didn't
Yeah.
pick up a paintbrush again, and he was a good painter.
I've seen that.
Well, but sadly,
Maybe he
you've got to be a little tougher.
You got to
You
do
have to
it. I
believe
mean,
in
that's
yourself.
part of it.
Yeah.
But
You really have to believe in yourself and what you're doing.
yeah, and I think students still do that. I'm always,
There's certain ones,
pleasantly
and you know
surprised
which
I hear-
ones they are. You know the people that have it. And I'm sure you lose ones that are phenomenally talented. But you know something, you got to go through that 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
think exactly. It's like to think 2 years right there. He's setting up
Yeah.
his own demise in
Well,
a
he
sense,
was.
and that's unfortunate.
Well, the old days used to be able to tell what you would have somebody come in, show you the portfolio. You'd be able, without even talking to them, to know what school they came from, what teacher
Yeah,
they
right.
dealt with. I mean, it was
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
that's
dude,
not
you
so
have
true
to get
anymore.
under. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not true anymore.
But you know-
well, that's the next question. I mean, the idea where it used to be so true, and now it had. I mean, is it a good thing or a bad thing that these guys are? They have no sort of. Well, that's not true.
No, they don't. But
Do you see that? Now I've heard through a lot of the artists that I represent or teachers. I've heard some real horror stories about respecting teachers and
Right.
respecting the knowledge that the teachers are trying to give, and how that's sort of being somewhat devalued.
Depends
Do you
on
find
the teacher,
that?
I think.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do, but it
I think
it's sometimes just a contest almost of personalities. I
Yeah.
mean, really, you go into an art department and meet people for the first time, and you can almost tell, who's the popular teachers and
Right.
who's the
I still remember-
one that kids are making fun of.
I still
Right,
remember.
right
I still
there.
remember the Randy Bolton show. We had the Randy Bolton show, and I forget the woman's name that used to teach down.
Oh,
here.
oh, God.
Oh,
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
say the name.
No, no,
Yeah, I don't want to put her on tape.
Yeah.
Poor
but,
thing,
but this
yeah.
woman, this woman comes up to me and goes, "I don't know why you would show this crap when you could show my stuff." And this is at his
that's
opening.
great.
I thought, man,
Well, that's right, and they were colleagues.
they were college.
ooh, ouch.
Yeah, that was
Well-
tough. Well, he ended up, leading and really landing on his more than on his feet. He had a
Yeah, well,
Great job.
He
What?
went to Cranbrook. And
Yeah.
he was at Cranbrook for a couple
That's
years.
a
and
great
then-
position to have.
I think
Yeah.
he retired from teaching from Cranbrook.
He
Right?
did.
Yes.
He did. He's down in Marfa now.
He's what?
Marfa, down there,
Oh.
where Judd had set up his
Judd's
center.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently that's like a
Foundation.
little haven of like artists and
There are
Rugby now.
havens of artists.
I never
all
saw
over
him
the
as
place.
a guy could function well within a haven. He's it's either him or the
No,
highway.
no,
Oh well. Well, good for
Randy
him.
was a strong, yeah. Randy
But you know, when you think about students, there are a lot of, if you have taught for a long time, you'll find that people sort of resurface who they start like in photography, they thought they would be commercial photographers.
Uh-huh.
Or, you know, there's always that option out there to do something, you know, that's profitable like that. But they end up doing all kinds of other creative things.
Yeah.
And then you find out, you know, like 15, 20 years later, that they're still making their work.
Yes.
And then some of them really will push through. They're doing really interesting stuff. They never gave it up. Like, you know, they
Right.
took a
Well,
back seat. But
they took a back seat,
Yeah.
but they lived a life and
It was part of that.
And
Yeah.
and that a lot of whatever they did probably ultimately
Yeah.
would influence the work, and the work came back.
yeah.
And that's I've had that experience. It's just been, it's like a wonderful surprise.
But
Like
that's
Yeah,
also the
and
kind
it
of great
happens.
self-actualization of what art can give you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
You know,
right.
you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
It is
you
all
know,
quite
the
real,
reality
but-
is that sometimes you can't maintain it for
No.
whatever reason.
Oh,
And yet, maybe some of those things change. You have, you know,
Well,
for a woman, maybe having children and a
Mm-hmm.
family, but they take a little bit, they do it a little bit on the side, and then at some, I mean, Nisa did that.
Yeah.
Nisa didn't work,
yeah.
brought up, had her children, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, then came,
Lisa Grasky, was she? I thought she was always.
no, she was,
No,
there was a
she's-
period of time where
yeah.
she didn't work at all.
Yeah.
Needs to
So-
cross
She
it.
must have been thinking
Yeah.
about something.
No,
Her
of course. I
work
think
is,
her work is
beautiful.
incredibly
Yeah.
strong.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
But I remember hearing her. I mean, she's a colleague now, but when I first heard, like, she talked about not working, and
Well, I'm around a lot of artists because of the craft school sort of
right,
workshop thing that I'm involved with, that who, you know, they don't teach. Most of them don't teach.
yeah, that's probably true, isn't
And
it?
and it's they're very focused on craft
Mm-hmm.
process. If they do teach, they'll come in and teach like 2 weeks, and it's incredible. You know, very exciting. Their students are all ages.
Right.
Some of
right.
them very accomplished artists. Some of them, you know, 18, 19 years old, right up to like 80 years old.
Right. Right.
All kinds of people. Some people who have finished their careers, they're lawyers, they're surgeons, or
Yeah.
you know,
See a lot
very
of that now,
accomplished,
yeah.
Yep.
skilled people,
Yeah.
very interested
Yeah.
in art, and
And
very
a different
excited.
discipline coming at it from a completely different
Yeah.
kind of discipline.
Very excited
Yeah.
about art and creativity. Finally, you know, some of them will say, "I always wanted to be an artist," but you know,
Right.
You know,
They got-
just
So
for the
it's-
sake of this tape and context, Alida just finished her term as chair of the board at Penman School.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've been on the board for how many years?
Long
now?
time.
12 years
12
on
years.
that board. But I've taught at Anderson Ranch and
Okay.
Haystack and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different craft schools. It kind of
Alright, well, here's
came
this.
up through the craft school system.
Between the three of you, how's being a teacher informed your work?
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
wow. For me, what a privilege to teach. I mean, you know, I was around ideas all the time. You have to, I've always felt, you know, you have to practice what you preach. So I always stayed involved with making art. The influences that you come across all the time, and some of them from students.
Yeah.
Very
Absolutely.
smart, interesting,
Absolutely.
you know, who will set you sort of on a whole different focus. You know, I thought teaching for me was amazing. I never intended to teach, never thought I would. I don't know if I was any good at it, but it was really great.
Yeah.
and a creative endeavor. Yeah, I can't say anything really bad about it.
Yeah, no, I
had great
found it
colleagues.
to go mainly more so when they're later on in their studios, but even in classrooms where they will show me something that they're looking at,
Mhm.
and then they're thinking about something in relation to that. It's just fascinating because it's like, oh, I wouldn't have gone there.
Mm-hmm.
Then I understand them that a little bit more. And it can also end up being something I'm in my studio kind of thinking about that, or I'm looking up
Right.
that person that they just showed
Yeah.
me. But it's also a feeling of excitement to watch them grow. I love that. And their energy does feed me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it feeds me a little less because I feel like I'm sort of at the end of my teaching time, or that I don't have the same energy, so I can't quite keep up with them in some ways. But no, I think teaching is a gift.
Oh,
To have been given that
yeah.
Yeah.
and have that opportunity to be exposed to so many different people from so many different backgrounds and where they came and how they made this choice to be in this world is fascinating.
And with the critique system,
Yeah,
you know, if you're going to critique your students' work, you have to at all times be critiquing your own and having other people being aware that other people
Right.
are critiquing your work too.
right,
And so it keeps you on your toes.
right.
Which,
enough.
you know, when you're not teaching, lots of people who never teach, because most people don't teach,
Right.
they look for people to talk to about their work.
Yeah, it's a,
It's
it's
not
a big deal.
And it's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to do it.
No.
And
And
it's not
so-
necessarily always a positive thing.
No.
No.
If you get the
No.
wrong person, they can
It
ruin
can
it.
be, yeah.
You only need,
Or,
you know,
or,
you don't
or,
need
or
much.
objective person.
One or two people
yeah, you
that
don't,
you-
exactly.
Yeah.
You don't need very many people
Right,
to talk to about your work. I'm lucky because I have Steve.
right,
You know, I can go over and say to Steve, like, look, I want to do this thing or this thing. They're very close, like, very close.
Right.
The two things I want to do. And I'll bring him in. You've got to come over. You've got to come over. Make him
Right, here's
come
a-
over to my studio.
Here's an interesting question. Since
Yeah.
you're involved with an artist.
right. Who's a
You're a
photographer?
photographer. Your mother was an artist.
Right.
Yeah.
Your mother was an artist.
Yes.
Your sister's
Right.
an artist.
Yeah.
Your husband's an artist.
Yeah.
What the hell's that about?
Well, we like to be around
An artist.
artists.
It's
I-
familiar.
But how? I mean, but
I
it's,
think of our son, and we
and yeah, Steve's an artist. Did he go
tried
for
to
law?
dissuade
Yeah, he went into
art
law.
training and said, you know,
We never
dropped
wanted him to
law
be an
school,
artist.
hints, everything, and he tried law school for a semester.
Yeah.
Now he's an artist. How that happened,
Because
I tried to
Because there's
figure
something
out.
there. I was telling John that my daughter, for years, was like, why are we involved in? Why are you a poor artist? Why are you a
Yeah.
poor art dealer and all this and stuff like that? She goes to school. She's involved with this kid now. He's an artist. I go, what the hell's that?
No.
Well, you know what? He goes, well, I told him he can't be an artist. So the kid calls me up. The kid calls me up. He's like, how do I make money at this? So after like 20 minutes of laughing,
Yeah.
I go, well, if you work really hard, it's all about the art, and you work really hard, and you get good, you can do something. But if you get really good, you're not going to make any money. So
Well, it's,
it's really amazing.
the money thing has been
But
a real
but
problem.
it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle.
It is.
It is.
yes,
And you
it's a lifestyle
gotta
thing.
love it.
And what's really confusing for young people, I imagine, is that if they go into a gallery like Goshen, and they've just been to the local galleries, and
Right.
Wow,
and,
yeah.
and then
That's
and then
it.
they see the price of this painting is $1.2 million.
that's what they want.
Holy
Well, take an
goodness!
actor.
I could be this artist.
Mm-hmm.
If I
Well,
I
the
go to
strange
Germany
thing is,
or
like,
something.
now you can.
Yeah.
If you have the right story or you have the right,
we had a
Pedigree.
slew of students who got it in their head to they're going to go to New York or Berlin
Right.
and I was really curious
Some of
about
them did it.
and a lot of them did it, and a lot of them did pretty well, and
Yeah.
are still doing pretty well. That Berlin connection was a big one and that's something that it completely eluded me. I have no idea what's going on in
Well, it's
Berlin.
a strategy. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
business
but
strategy.
it has worked.
Well, and again, the world is smaller now because they can be, they probably already
Well, if you're-
connected with somebody. Or one of my students, and somebody asked her to have one or two of her paintings in a show in Germany. And I said, well, how'd you make that connection? She said, I don't know. I think they
It's
saw
on
something.
Facebook.
It's something. Yeah.
They said something of my work, and they called me up, and I'm like, oh my God.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
She'd been out of undergrad for a year, and this
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. I
You know?
just took on 2 new people that I saw on Facebook.
So,
I mean, and I just swore to God that was never going to
I
happen.
was going to say, I'm
Good for
surprised.
you.
But the thing is, like, these kids are getting smart in the sense, because I think I related that story to you about the idea of some of these kids are just about the branding of
Right,
the institution instead of the actual learning of the institution. But if you follow the steps that you need to follow, the people that are buying that high-end art are buying a story, and they're buying a pedigree. I mean, they don't know the art; they just know the
Right,
story.
right.
And then they ship it
like
down
that young girl we were talking about, like, Yale,
Right.
SWAT.
Right.
If you go this certain, and John was telling us about the Carnegie Invitational, and it was like all Yale people.
It's always been Yale people.
It's always, that's
I mean,
nothing
when I was
new.
That's not them.
Yeah.
No.
Can I ask Jan one question? And it's about the artist from Nigeria who now lives in New York, went to the Academy,
And then went to Yale.
but she had a painting that sold on auction for $3 million. How does that affect current Academy students? I know you have one of her paintings hanging.
I think suicides are up.
Yeah. No, I mean, on one hand, it's,
But I don't even mind the fountain.
on one hand, there's that, and on the other hand, it's like, oh my God, it's possible. I can do it.
Anybody can do it.
She can do it. She
Hey,
came,
Chris,
because they see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
as
Caught
an
up.
example. She came as a post-bac student, which is that in-between year between undergraduate and graduate. And then she chose to go into the undergraduate program because she could see the academies very disciplined about the figure, and she wanted that. And then I think she did 2 years of that and then applied to Yale and got in. And so she's,
thank you very much.
but she's incredibly determined, has a good narrative.
Her work is really good, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
no, it is. It's very good. And so all of that, I mean, she works really hard and she's done well.
Yeah, but is it
But she,
$3.2 million?
well, it's like the 50 million, I'm sorry, of Hockney. But I just find, what does that do for us? It does absolutely
Does
nothing for us.
Does nothing.
It probably hurts the regular artist that somebody's getting $50 million for
I'd
a
say it
painting.
considerably hurts
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
mean,
artists.
Well, I was just telling Jan.
Well, you mean
that-
it hurts their feelings.
I think I'm trying to divide
Well,
what the
yeah,
average painting costs today.
Well, no, but
Divide that into
but
50 million.
Right.
auction is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
People that are amazingly talented artists are going
Right.
for nothing at auction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can build a great collection if you're that kind of.
Believe me.
Oh,
Chris
yeah.
is doing that.
I'm doing that.
If you're
That's what
that
I'm doing.
predatory, you can go online and get
It's
pieces
not even
that are.
predatory. I mean, it's like
It's what's available.
it's what's available.
Right.
And the problem is that.
But is
and
that going to be available and galleries are going to be less and less?
That's a big thing that I'm thinking about. And unfortunately, I think that that's not the case. I think that we're always talking about the vitality of a current art up and going is always exciting and always important,
Right.
and always will be important to artists and collectors. The idea is whether that collector, the idea of
Well, the collector is
connoisseurship,
going to,
we're not talking about this 1% people that are about commodity and storing money. We're talking about people that actually give a crap about it.
right.
But I mean, you see it throughout all disciplines. You see it in early American furniture. You see it in, a good example is quilts. In the 80s, 86, you see these Amish quilts that were going for $3,000-$4,000, some even more. Now they go for
Sure.
a couple $100 a piece for like a really phenomenal.
Well, and Pine Street
Yeah.
is pretty barren.
Well,
I mean,
it
it was the antique road street of Philadelphia.
If you want to read something really amazing, is read the exit letter of David McKee, who represented a number of phenomenal artists. He wrote this long thing about what it was about being an art dealer and how it was gone when he gave up his gallery, and it's just heartbreaking.
This is he believes there's no more connoisseurs at.
It doesn't matter.
Well,
Good examples of going through Philadelphia now and seeing these people that are buying $700,000 houses that are just crap.
Yeah.
that's true.
What is good? What is crafted? What has integrity? What has thought behind it? There's an idea that when you get something that is highly crafted or artful, there's an element of divinity in it that connects with all of us and reassures us and self-actualizes. That's what we shoot for. That's why buying a piece of art is important, because you have that in front of you if you feel it.
Yeah.
And you say, that's what I'm striving for, or that's what I'm striving for. Or I thought that's what I was striving for, and it turns out not to be the case. But that's only through looking. You can't do it without looking. And people don't want to look, or won't look for any time.
Length of time.
Well,
You know, I was just telling Jan before this started that I had some clients in and walking through the exhibit and really didn't connect to it. And then went up to Alida's show and looked at Alida's and really dug Alida's, and it came down. And then we started talking about Jan's stuff, and they started to get it. And then they actually stayed 3 hours in the gallery going back and forth between the things where they weren't really connecting with it at first. I'm like, you gotta slow down, you gotta look.
Well, that's.
did they reach for their checkbook in the end?
No, but they have in the past, so they get that
Well, that's good.
pass.
Yeah.
They're actually an interesting couple. They live in Burlington County. They live in a small 2-story house. It's almost like
It's
the
like-
Mount
yeah,
County. It's
yeah.
very similar,
Huh.
and the house is just filled with really wonderful, thought out contemporary
Nice.
art.
That's cool.
There are
And then
people.
you walk
there are
in
people,
there and
yeah.
you go, damn, that's a couple people that you
Yeah.
aspire
Yeah.
towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Okay, the working artist of yore, all my friends from the Academy, they're not international art stars, they don't have huge grant money coming in every month, and they have been able to make a living. Is it now winner take all, one guy gets tens of millions,
No,
nobody else gets anything?
It's just a segmented market. There's the high-end market, and it's not even. It used to be just high-end names, but it's not even high-end names anymore. It's just the top 10% pieces of that high name. Like you might see a Basquiat going for 500 million, but there's a bunch of bad Basquiats going for a lot less. So it's just the creme of the creme of that 1%, and then there's the whole other thing, and that's sort of the interesting thing for me lately is trying to figure out whether the immense wave of social media and information and everything that's coming at people just occupies their mind to such an extent that thinking about something that's
That they're not
slow,
going to slow down.
that they can't slow down.
Right,
You're
right.
talking about the artists or the collectors?
The collectors. I think the artists. Now we can have
artists
that.
have
We
that trouble, too.
we can have that discussion. Is whether the aesthetic is changing because of that. And
Well-
I would say that your criticism of the Carnegie show has something to do with.
Well, like three of you guys are artists. I talked to many artists, and they say their best year was a number of years ago, and it's just been kind of downhill. Is that the case? I mean, could you guys live on your art sales?
No,
No.
I never assumed I
We had a
could.
few good.
Although actually we've
Yeah,
had
a
some
couple
good
good
years.
years.
I mean, and they were all they
But in the past.
occurred in the 80s and
Yeah,
90s.
in the
and
past
that's
you
it.
got some money.
Yeah.
Last
what's
year was
happened?
my best year.
That happened.
Was
Well,
it really?
Last year was
like
my
I was
best year.
saying, I mean, I get a lot of calls now for people wanting to sell. I mean,
Yeah.
our generation
Right.
is getting older.
Yeah.
Right,
And
right.
they're deacquisition. They're moving
Oh,
from
yeah.
their
Yeah,
house
no,
into their
that's-
smaller
yeah.
thing. And does the younger generation? I mean, I swear to God, the greatest thing in the world was after this guy's opening. Right before everybody left, you had left already, but there was like
Right.
3 young ladies that
three
came,
of my
old students that came to the show at the end, and then they came up to the house, and there was a bunch of people in the house, artists and stuff like that. And it was amazing to have these young artists talking about stuff, showing stuff. It was just, you just didn't get it anymore. But you don't see that with the young collectors. I mean, you just, well, I think because they're spending so much money just to buy a house that's
Yeah.
full of crap.
Yeah, I
They
think
have
that's a
nothing,
large part of it.
they have
If you
student
think
loans,
about
the whole
it, they
nine
have
yards.
student loans. If they want a house, then that's going to be, and sometimes both people are working and they eat out a lot. I mean, right there, I can't imagine. It's an incredible amount of money they're spending.
Yeah.
And so to buy something is just a huge luxury. I mean, we know that's always been
That's
true.
always been the case.
But
yeah.
I think now the economics have changed so that it's much lower down in the list
Well,
of
you know
what,
something,
when they're going to spend.
I disagree with that. I don't think that's the case. I think that there's so much input that they don't think about it as much. I think that there's so much noise. There's
Well-
so much that's coming at them. You know, they're on the Netflix. They're watching, 500 episodes of this or that. That, they, where they used to come home, have dinner, sitting at the table, and go, there's a spot on that wall. Why don't we get something for that? Why don't we go look and do that? Now it's like you're all sitting around the table doing this. And
Right.
they're not even looking at their walls. They're not even looking at their environment. You go into a lot of these houses, the walls are empty. They don't even have posters up.
Yeah,
It's intimidating for a lot of people that buy art.
They're
That buy their
incredibly
first
I know.
pieces of art.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They don't want to appear
Yeah,
stupid.
well,
or-
to a certain extent, it's sort of like what you were talking about, young artists, the ones that have the talent, the people that have that thing, and they come in, and they might be timid or whatever, but they have it. They're looking, they're going to the galleries, whether they relate to the gallery that they're talking to at the time or they go to another one, but they're going to the shows, they're going to see the art. It's important to them. We're talking about two different things here. There's the people that are the artists and the collectors that have that innate thing,
Right,
and you
right.
know it when you see it. These people do it because it's part of them and they have that glow, whatever it is.
Right.
And maybe it might have been some sort of anomaly that over the last 10, 15 years, that contemporary art has been less intimidating. People were into it. People were going and looking and buying. We're talking about in the late 70s and stuff like that. Philadelphia was the same thing.
Right,
If
right.
it wasn't a landscape with smoke coming out of the skyline, it just didn't move.
right.
And then for about 15, 20 years, people gave a crap. They
Yeah.
really looked. And
Well,
it was-
I always enjoyed, and I'm sure you have done it, and certainly Ben Mangle when I was with him.
Yeah.
Is that Ben would say, well, there was a young couple in, and they're really interested in one of your works, but they can't buy it all. Yeah, they can't. And I said, well, do it on time. I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I always
I
like
mean,
that. If somebody bought a
particularly,
piece of
I
mine on
love
time.
that.
yeah. I loved it too. I haven't had that in a long
My
time.
God, that's
I love
great.
to imagine bill paying time. They go, that goddamn tip.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then everybody check.
But
But,
yeah,
but then
I-
they've got something and they care and I know, I think we've talked about this and you said you don't get people doing that and I wonder
well, I
whether-
used to. I mean, I would say up until like the mid 2000s, I would say that 20%, 25% of the stuff I sold were to artists, and they were paying it over time.
Right.
I had I think at one time I had about like 20 people paying it off over time.
Right,
Yeah, I just don't see it anymore.
yeah. And I wonder why that is. Again, maybe it's just there's not the interest.
We're talking about
Desire.
a pleasure. Do you read the paper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think young people read the paper?
Well, they do on this.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
I know.
You mean there's a tactile?
Right, yeah. At school, there should be more of an emphasis of young artists figuring out how to get people to become collectors.
Yeah,
And for them to think about
that would be an interesting class.
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Because that's,
some dealers actually have these little gatherings where they talk about art. They're like a seminar.
Yeah.
And then they'll have 3 or 4, I don't know if you've ever done that. but
Yeah, I used to do that a lot. And well,
Yeah.
this is what this is too, to a
Right,
certain extent.
right.
right.
Showing work and talking about it and, sort of teaching people who want to know.
Well, that's what those
Yeah.
films that John was doing for
Yeah.
a long
Yeah,
time.
and I think-
I mean, they were definitely instructive, and people enjoyed it. Where are we at on time on this thing, Jonathan?
It's probably enough.
Probably enough.
All right, sum it up, everyone. Final statements.
That's something I wanted to
Yes.
interject. It's almost irrelevant with this group, but I've noticed this because I'm a realist painter, so that there's been a resurgence of interest in not so much buying realist paintings, unfortunately, but for young students to get a training in realism. They've learned somehow that they just simply can't do it in a typical four-year institution. Not so much an art school. Of course, it depends on the art school, but.
They can
You know,
learn,
there-
yeah.
there- there's
I mean,
been
the
a-
academy focuses on that, obviously.
Well, the Academy, I always wondered
But-
why the Academy didn't take their stellar their reputation as a realist school and apply that into their graduate school. They didn't. And
Yes, I know.
I don't know how successful that program is, but I know that there's a school in New York that's
Yes.
devoted
New
figurative
York Academy.
school.
Yeah, yeah, New York
Yeah.
Academy.
In
Yeah.
New York Academy,
And
yeah.
that's been pretty successful.
Well, I
And in
think
fact,
those-
to
I
the
mean,
point where some of the only artists that are showing realism either have to come from
those
the
schools.
academy
Right.
or, some private atelier like
Right,
Jacob Collins has.
Yeah. Well,
Not
there's a
just
lot
one.
more
He's
of
got
that
about
stuff
5
coming through.
ateliers, and and he's a painter. I don't know how the hell he does it, but or why he'd want to do it.
You're
Well,
right.
I mean,
do it.
look at. I mean, what's?
Well, who's the guy who was, up
Oh,
the river? Come on.
Yeah.
yeah,
Nelson
the
Shanks.
portrait guy.
Nelson Shanks.
Yeah.
Studio in
Right.
Caminati.
What does that mean? In it's not an
Rosie-
Italian word.
It's just,
Rosie Nichols, I
it,
always
it
say.
sounds important.
Probably means I'm not a communist.
Well, if you don't know what it means,
I remember
Yeah, you go-
Chuck telling those things. And I'm just like,
Exactly.
I've never seen such.
But these
nipples in my life.
men. These are painters with enormous outsized egos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I mean,
it's
that was the Bravo male.
Yeah, but it's all about them and,
Yeah,
and
right.
their teaching. But they did. They have disciples that have gone out there
Oh,
and
absolutely.
spread
and
the
collectors.
word.
Collectors love
Yeah.
the big egos. They
Yes.
love
Well, it's
the
another
story. They
Yeah.
really do. And I don't blame them. I mean,
No,
I just
no, they-
wish that,
they
that
want
they
they
got
want
to
an
know
education.
more
They-
people than just the big
Just
egos.
that, yeah.
But there's a lot to say about if I'm like this also. If I meet somebody and I like their work, I think, oh, I'd like to have a piece by that person.
Mm-hmm.
It is that personal connection is huge when
Yeah.
it comes to collecting, and collecting is the real issue
Right.
at the heart of all of this. I think in the long run,
Yeah.
how do you create a new age group that collects,
Yeah.
and how do you connect with those people? They want to meet you,
Right.
and
And we're gonna do that on YouTube.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
But
All right,
do you
Jen.
have groups of people sometimes come to? I had
To our studios.
Yeah.
We had a group last September. No, we're
was
incredibly
agonizing.
private.
No, I don't do it very often. I did it
We've
recently.
done it once.
Yeah,
and
I've
I
done,
said
it,
never
I've done
again.
it twice, and it's.
I get paranoid. I hide all my cadmiums.
Well, it's funny. I went to Blex or something like that. They have like a whole safe that you have to get your cadmiums
Oh,
out.
yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
you have to get like three.
Under lock and key.
Yeah, it's like a nuclear code. You have to do 2 keys at once and pull them out. But I think what we got there, I think we're good.
Okay, one final thing.
Yep.
You guys talk about painting as if it's still a thing at the Carnegie International.
There wasn't.
Well, there was maybe 2 painting-like
But painting
people.
dies
Isn't that a sad thing?
endlessly.
But never. You
Yeah,
should never let your
and
life be
emerges.
controlled by curators. Jesus.
Yeah.
What
Well,
kind of-
no, exactly.
Well, most of those curators, it's been my experience that like 50% or even more of those curators are all literature. Here's a
They're
literature.
28-year-old women who are very bright and they went to good schools and they're going to tell you what's what.
Well,
Right.
yeah, well,
Oh, right,
that,
as they
they
should,
brought up into
as
that
they
They should, right?
into the postmodern thing. But
I remember.
I didn't say that. That wasn't me. It was him.
Right. You,
Well,
I am offended
a
your
fellow.
white male hierarchy.
I remember that graduate students had gone to New York to get an audience with Clement Greenberg.
Oh yeah.
And
That'll do ya.
this was in the era of, painting should be flat. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So, and they did, and it's like, oh, master, this is my meager effort. What should I do? They would literally do that, and I thought those kind of experiences literally drove me
Well, listen.
to
Can I tell you
hard
something?
into realism.
One of the big big
Oh,
movements are
I
starting
didn't know that
to
was where-
rise in the auction world now.
What's that?
Is op art. Whoever
is.
thought op art? I actually studied with a guy by the name of
I know all 4 of them.
Yeah. Well, you probably don't know
No,
this one.
there's
Fangor. Wasulia Fangor. He was a Polish guy. He had a Whitney show and all this.
Eastern Europe really took to.
well, that would make sense.
Yeah.
op
But
art.
I mean, who thought op art would be back? But it is, and they're going for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So figurative can't be far behind.
Probably too late for me.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let everybody eat.